everyone. I'm Ethan Liu with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's badminton men's doubles duo are in the final at the Paris Olympics. In their semifinal match, Tokyo Olympic gold medalists Li Yang and Wang Qiling beat Kim Estrup and Anders Skarrup Rasmussen of Denmark by 2-1 after losing the opening game. It was Li and Yang's second win against the Danish pair. They also defeated them in the group stage on Sunday. Meanwhile, in athletics, Zhang Boya has advanced to the next round in the women's 100-meter race. She clocked 11.99 seconds in her heat. In swimming, Han Anqi placed second in her group in the women's 200-meter individual medley heats, but she was disqualified, possibly due to an issue with her movement. The exact reason has not been announced. The Chinese region of Macau is pressuring Taiwan to accept that it's part of China. It's demanding that staff at Taiwan's representative office there sign a document recognizing Beijing's One China principle. Louis Swat reports from the Foreign Ministry.
Taiwan's foreign ministry is having trouble sending staff to its representative office in the Chinese autonomous region of Macau. An official that was going to be posted there cannot get a visa. That's because they're refusing a demand by the Macau government to recognize Beijing's One China principle. That principle advocates that there is only one China, ruled by Beijing, and Taiwan is a part of it. That's something that the government of Democratic Taiwan, which has never been ruled by the Chinese Communist Party, does not accept.
我方要正告澳门政府尽速摒除不必要的障碍，友善处理澳处人员的派驻问题。
Liang says the office's passport and visa services are being affected by a lack of staff. This isn't the first time it's happened. In 2021, Taipei recalled its Taiwanese staff from their Hong Kong office after the government there made a similar demand. China has been ramping up diplomatic pressure on Taiwan as part of a campaign to one day control it. In a message to Macau, Taipei says imposing political conditions in return for a visa is unreasonable and that such a requirement will harm Macau's international image, as well as exchanges between the territory and Taiwan. Justin Wu and Louise Watt in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Parts of Taiwan are struggling to recover a week after Typhoon Ki caused severe flooding. In Changhua, some residents are blaming poor public infrastructure for their losses, and they've taken to the streets to demand the government take action. Zhang Mentrist reports.
There's a standoff underway in this Changhua neighborhood, with police facing over 100 angry residents. Just over a week ago, this area was underwater after intense downpours brought by Typhoon Ki overwhelmed the local river. The losses have been immense, and people here say they could have been prevented. This crowd blames public works along the riverbanks for narrowing the river, leaving the sudden rush of water with nowhere to drain. This is an industrial part of Taiwan, and livelihoods are at stake. An initial damage report puts this paper goods factory's losses at over $600,000. The owner says his family has been in the neighborhood for years, and they've lived through many typhoons without ever seeing this kind of flooding. He agrees that poorly designed public works are to blame. County officials say they will dismantle this metal sheeting for now and reevaluate flood control measures here, though they dispute the idea that this was what made last week's flooding so bad. But this and the central government's promise of up to $1,500 in subsidies for eligible households damaged by flooding have not calmed local anger. People say this was a human-made disaster, not a natural one. Business owners in particular want more subsidies and tax deductions for damage. And the protest in Changhua County is just one glimpse at one community's response to a disaster that's marked the whole nation. From farms to businesses to transport links, Taiwan has a steep bill to pay before it can move on. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's National Human Rights Commission has agreed with the complaint that uniforms for female flight attendants constitute gender discrimination. The Taoyuan Flight Attendants Union filed a complaint with the commission last year. For most airlines in Taiwan, female flight attendants are required to wear skirts, heels, and makeup. The complaint said this is time-consuming, restrictive, and opens women to sexual harassment. The union also said uniforms may be life-threatening because flight attendants train for emergencies, wearing pants and sneakers. The Human Rights Commission agreed that the different standards for male and female flight attendants are unfair to women. It says the government should come up with guidelines on gender equity and workplace safety for national airlines. Taiwan's Defense Ministry reports that a rocket launched from China passed over central Taiwan on Thursday night. Chinese state media said the launch was a Long March 3B rocket. It was carrying a communications satellite and posed no threat to Taiwan. Cameras along Taiwan's east coast showed fireballs in the night sky. They're presumed to be part of the rocket re-entering the atmosphere. The United States looks set to implement further restrictions on exports of chip-making equipment to China. The move will follow previous measures to limit China's access to key technology via companies both inside and outside the U.S. Chris Gore explains the growing trade tit-for-tat between China and the U.S.
The U.S. has been restricting the export of key chip technologies to China for the last 2 years, placing penalties on companies that sell to China. This applies not only to the chips themselves, but also to the essential tools needed to make chips, such as lithography systems, which only a few companies in the world produce. The first set of major U.S. restrictions began in October 2022, with a second round coming the following year. Last May, American companies Intel and Qualcomm were barred from selling chips to China's Huawei. China has responded to these moves by restricting export of key raw minerals needed for electronics manufacturing, including gallium, germanium, and eventually graphite. That all leads to these most recently reported rules, the official text of which has not yet been released.
To learn more about the new U.S. rule, Chris also spoke with David Nicholson from the market research firm Future & Group. He began by asking him how the U.S. can enforce penalties on companies outside its own borders.
What if it's a company outside of the borders of the United States that's using a bunch of American technology to build a final product that they're arguing is, well, it's a Dutch product? It's like, wait a minute, but you used American hardware and software and advanced technology to build it. Yeah, but we built it in the Netherlands. Okay, well, we still don't think you should be allowed to sell that to our adversaries. You are subject to the same export controls that you would be if you were an American company directly trying to sell that technology.
Initial reporting seems to indicate that companies in Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands might not be included. These are some of the most important countries in the chip-making supply chain. Why would they be left out?
It's not necessarily an exclusion or an exemption per se. It's just acknowledgement that companies within these countries are already essentially in compliance when it comes to the new, more rigorous rules. So I want to believe that's the answer. It's all on the up and up, and it isn't some sort of other backroom political favoritism that's going on. But I believe that that's the case.
Malaysia, Israel, Singapore, and even Taiwan are expected to be affected by this. Does the U.S. run the risk of harming its relations with these countries?
It's a bit of a, walking the balance beam for the U.S. because you're balancing commercial interests of your allies and your domestic companies, while at the same time there's this looming global security question. I can tell you personally, as an American, it sort of makes me cringe when I hear about my government regulating free trade and the idea that a company in Taiwan is going to have a rough time because, well, wait a minute, shouldn't Taiwan get to decide what it sells to China?
Okay, bottom line here, are these rules going to have their intended effect on China?
Yeah, I think that it's undeniable that it creates friction in the system for China. It slows their ability to get from where they are now to where they want to be. Will it prevent them from ultimately dominating AI globally, whatever that means? Who knows? The U.S. assertion is it's all about security. China will tell you, hey, you know what? You're just really messing with the global economy. You're hurting your partners, and we're going to get there eventually with you or without you.
That was David Nicholson, Chief Research Officer at the Futurum Group. On Friday in Paris, Taiwanese boxer Yu-ting kicks off her Olympic challenge. TaiwanPlus met her before she traveled to France to find out how she prepared.
Taiwanese boxer Yu-ting has been a contender in women's boxing for years. Now 28, the national team athlete has devoted all her time and attention to her Olympic dream. She'll get her shot on Friday when she steps into the ring in Paris with Satora Turdybekova of Uzbekistan in the women's featherweight round of 16.
我就是要好好把握巴黎奥运这场比赛，那为自己、为台湾，然后拿到一个属于我们台湾的奥运金牌。对。
If she does, it'll be a first for Taiwan in the sport and a high point in Lin's 15-year boxing career, which has seen her touch gloves over 60 times. It'll also be a major achievement for her coach.
从国中的时候，他就是我，然后一直到他就读高中啊、大学，这样一路到现在，大概我们合作了有15年的时间。
Coach Zhang has watched Lin grow into the featherweight contender she is today. He's been there through the grueling daily grind of elite-level boxing training and knows what motivates her to keep running, keep sparring, and keep her hands up. That included a trip to China and visiting the venues of the 2008 Olympics in Beijing.
那其实教练当时就指着场馆，然后就告诉我说：“你能够想象？” 你在这个场馆这么多人、几万人、几十万人的场馆，然后在下面，在这么多人的注视下，然后打一场比赛给他们看，吗？
That inspirational challenge worked. Lin has since fought best in the world, including at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo and at the 2022 Women's Boxing Championships in Istanbul. It was winning gold at the 2023 Asian Games in Hangzhou, China, that presented her with the chance to fight in the Paris Olympics. Yet earlier that same year, she faced the biggest setback of her career when she was stripped of a World Boxing Championships bronze for failing a gender eligibility test. Despite not having competed in the female category for years and being cleared to compete by the International Olympic Committee twice, questions about her gender have followed her ever since. But elite boxers like Lin Yu-ting are nothing if not persistent. It's her commitment to the sport and willingness to make sacrifices that's kept her on her path.
就是如果说再重来一次，让我投胎再重来一次，我可能还是会选拳击。对，因为虽然说拳击在训练的过程，应该说在训练体育项目的过程当中，一定是辛苦的，但 它可以带给你的成就跟果实是甜美的。
While Lin Yu-ting prepares for her first bout in Paris, the fight to prove herself has extended outside of the ring. For that reason, nothing will prove sweeter than the taste of Olympic glory. Ryan Wu, Sandy Chi, Bryn Thomas, and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, take a look at the Karen Sea in Croatia. Local officials plan to submit it for a Guinness World Record for smallest sea in the world. I'm Ethan Liu. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
For more news from Taiwan and around the world, go to TaiwanPlus.com and download the TaiwanPlus app.